Neal Gorevic is the Chief Marketing Officer at ConsenSys, which drives Ethereum ecosystem development. ConsenSys is behind the key pieces of Ethereum infrastructure, including Metamask and Infura. In today's podcast, Neal discusses his transition from Web2 marketing at Spotify to Web3 marketing. He goes into why ConsenSys is rebranding and provides insights into the strategic vision for the company. But first, we begin our conversation with an introduction on why Neal decided to make the jump to crypto.
I've been with ConsenSys now for about a year and a half, and it's been really exciting to make the jump from Web2 to Web3. I'm a career marketer myself, and I have been in software from the beginning. I started at a company called Razorfish, which is one of the earlier kind of .com consulting firms and advertising agencies. And I was attracted to work there because they were working with a lot of big companies, helping them figure out how to use the internet. And then as a lot of the platform businesses started to scale, I saw that as an interesting marketing challenge. And that brought me to Spotify. And I was there for about 6 years where I was overseeing the global consumer marketing team, so helping build the brand, internationalize, and grow the product. And it was a really inspiring, and still is an inspiring company to work for in a number of ways, because I think they do a great job of keeping reverence for the creator and helping understand how creators can be more prosperous in a digital world. But as I was starting to observe a lot of the trends in the Web3 space beginning to emerge from 2018 to now, it seemed like there was really these new interesting outlets for creators to even own more of their output and have more agency and control over the things that they were doing. And that's really what brought my attention to Web3 to begin with. And so that was kind of my foray into the space and learning about how a lot of artists and musicians were beginning to use the technology to cultivate fan groups and communities. And along the way, I discovered ConsenSys and learned about all of the great things that the company had been doing. And I met with Joe, and the rest is history, so to speak.
I think it's really interesting that, that kind of counterpoint that you mentioned, where, Spotify, as great as it is, and, I use it every day, but still it's become kind of one of the symbols of how just like the Web2 structure has been around extracting value from creators, right? So it's, it's become, just like a common for musicians to highlight how they can have millions of listens on Spotify, but earn maybe a couple of dollars a year from that, or not seeing much value from the amount that they're putting in to the platform itself. So I think one of the promises of Web3 is to revert that and actually allow creators to have a lot more ownership on the value they're providing. So it's really interesting that kind of you come from Spotify and then saw that happening and kind of jumped over to the other side and hopefully kind of seeing that model be improved or reverted.
It's if you look at the last 10 to 15 years, a lot of the work that Web2 companies have done is they've built businesses around scale, and that scale has produced the benefit of more people adopting the internet and using it more proactively. But the missing element of Web2 companies has often been the underlying business model. And so, in order to supplement it, most of them applied advertising or subscriptions as mechanisms to extract value. And the beauty of Web3 is that the business model is effectively built into the code. And so the opportunity for creators to cultivate their own communities and really right size their fan groups was something that I felt was really, really interesting. The thing about being a musician that wants to live off their work, or any type of artist really, or any producer of content online, is that scale may not be the metric that you're optimizing for. You may, look to optimize for the tight-knit, behaviors of your community, or being able to reward or engage with a certain group of people. And I think that that's the really fascinating thing for me about Web3 is it offers so many different ways to think about structuring communities outside of the one-size-fits-all world of Web2 products.
Absolutely. And then at ConsenSys, how have you seen or even driven the ConsenSys brand evolve from the time that you came in to where it is now? Like, what did you think ConsenSys stood for then, and how has that changed over time?
So, Camila, as you were mentioning at the top of the call, ConsenSys has been a fixture in the Ethereum ecosystem since the beginning. In fact, one of the fun facts I learned as I was joining the company was that ConsenSys as a company actually predates, the Genesis block of Ethereum. It was incorporated before that. So I think by most measures, or at least as far as I can tell, it is the first Web3 company that ever existed. And I was really fascinated by that history. And, through that time, the company had to go through many different iterations of itself to really help bootstrap and grow the Ethereum ecosystem and the broader Web3 ecosystem. Beginning as a venture development studio, seeding a number of really interesting projects that have turned into some of the larger, more used projects that exist in the ecosystem today. Exploring ways that they can support different companies and enterprises that want to use blockchain to improve their business or scale or build new infrastructure. And then, I think that one of the main turning points for ConsenSys, what happened a few years ago when they realized with a number of the companies that existed in the portfolio, there was this really interesting formative stack for enabling people to access and build in the Web3 ecosystem. And that stack is comprised of products like Metamask and Infura, and now products like Linea, a new ZK EVM that we launched earlier this year. Truffle and others that really represent the tools that enable people to build this ecosystem. I was really enamored by the scope and scale of ConsenSys from early on, and I thought that there was no company that offered as wide a breadth of services and solutions to the ecosystem. But as I was really meeting the people in ConsenSys, that's really when the spark hit me for the brand. And I really started to understand the company because it's a very mission-driven organization that understands that this software is inherently about enabling people to do things together on their own terms in a way that makes the world a better place. And I think that optimism is an important through line that comes from Joe himself to every employee in the business, and it's what creates a center of gravity around ConsenSys as a company. And so from early days of joining, I knew that I wanted to make sure that we were reflecting that identity in how we talked about ourselves and how we represented ourselves in the world, because we are optimistic about what this technology can do. And we do think that it solves these really important pain points in how the internet and the broader economy operates today. And so we wanted to tell that story.
I think this kind of focus on having ConsenSys be maybe an incubator of the infrastructure for builders of Ethereum is really interesting, and I think a lot clearer than maybe previous kind of narratives for ConsenSys. I think the structure of ConsenSys, the fact that it has so many kind of different branches and arms in Ethereum, made kind of its purpose and goal a little bit fuzzy, at least to me, before, because it was like, ConsenSys is incubating all of these projects. It's also investing in different projects, and it also has like a consulting branch, and so it was like it does so many different things that it wasn't entirely clear, what is it? Like if somebody asked me what's ConsenSys, what is it? A consulting firm? Is it a VC? It's an incubator. It's all of those things. But it looks like now the kind of the purpose is being more streamlined to what I understand. It's being more on kind of the incubator side of kind of its previous different branches. Is that right?
Well, I think, the exercise that we went through as we were beginning to evaluate our brand strategy and think about ways that we can refresh it and bring it to life in new ways was to focus on the audience that we're serving. And the cornerstone audience that we saw as the real power users of Web3, those that are creating the ecosystem, were builders. People who saw an opportunity to develop and produce new ways of interacting with software using blockchain technologies. And we saw something really inspiring in that persona and that identity. And what we also noticed was that, the power of Web3 really changes the way that you interact with software, even as a user. As we were kind of talking about before with large Web2 companies, that the adage is often, if it's free, you're the product. They're making money off of you, and you're really a passive contributor to these ecosystems. But when you create a wallet and you interact with a Web3 community, you're taking a very lean-in posture that is really emblematic of what builders do, which is they investigate, they create, they contribute, they collaborate with one another. And so what we saw overall was that this idea of the builder was actually something so much bigger than just being a technologist or producing code, as it's often associated with. It's actually a broader mindset that we want the world to really understand and embrace around the power of this software and what happens when you embrace self-sovereignty and agency that's enabled through blockchain technologies. And so that became the foundation for how we think about the company, and why we talk about the builder so explicitly now in our narrative is that we want the entire world to see themselves using this technology in their day in and day out, and regain some of the control and ownership that they feel is lacking today in how the internet serves them.
Mm-hmm. And the way that you do that is through owning parts of these really foundational parts of the ecosystem, like Metamask, Infura, now Linea, Truffle, all these kind of key infrastructure pieces. Is it kind of is ConsenSys focusing most of its energies there in kind of these existing infrastructure pieces, or is it also looking to incubate new ones?
So a little bit of both, I'd say. So with the core products that we have today, MetaMask, Infura, Linea, Truffle, and so forth, we see them as these really important tools to do two things. One is help developers build new products and services that are going to make the Web3 ecosystem more engaging and useful to a broader set of people. And then on the other side, we want to create tools and services like MetaMask that allow people to access and engage and manage how they navigate in that world. And so what we see is that both of those approaches are quite complementary, because the more interesting things there are in the ecosystem, the more people are going to really get value out of engaging in the ecosystem, and more people will ultimately come in and build and engage over time. We are definitely still exploring new business opportunities. I think that that's kind of inevitable in a space that is as emerging and dynamic as this one, where the core foundational technology continues to evolve and grow. And I think what we want to do is, serve as many of the diverse use cases that people have and need in the space. And so we're always on the lookout for new innovations that we can either incubate or partner with in the Web3 space.
So it sounds like you will be, besides focusing resources on these existing infrastructure pieces, also supporting new ones that are being built, and this is done by investing in kind of teams building, or is it through building them yourselves in-house, or both?
I think we're absolutely open on both sides as a business, but our core competency as a company is building software, and I think that's really where we excel, and I think that the absolute majority of our teams and resources are really focused on adding as much value to our core products as possible.
Asymmetrics is a decentralized non-custodial protocol for asymmetric yields distribution generated from staking. This is how it works. Users deposit their STETH to a common pool, then this pool accumulates staking rewards during 7 days and distributes them to 3 users only. The users can earn huge staking rewards without risk for initial deposit. So this is how you can add fun to routine ETH staking. How is it like as overseeing marketing for ConsenSys, dealing with so many different brands? There's, like we mentioned, like all these different projects, protocols, teams that are under one roof. So how do you manage that?
It's definitely, if I weren't saying that it was a challenge, I'd be lying. But I think it's a fun challenge and a really fun problem to solve. And a lot of it goes into how you think about the brand and the brand system that we're building as a company around all of the products and services. And typically you hear two types of marketers, or you hear marketers talking about two types of brand systems. There's what you would refer to as a branded house, where everything in a company has a product that is uniformly branded and it's all kind of endorsed by that larger entity. And so, a good example of that is a company like Coinbase, right? Coinbase is the parent brand of the company, but it has multiple verticals, and every product and service kind of falls into that house of products. Then the other side of the spectrum are companies that are called houses of brands. And so that is much more of a loose construct where you have a number of individually named products and services that sit within an organizing structure by audience segment or by channel. And so, a company like Unilever or P&G, where you don't really buy Unilever, but you may buy Dove soap. So that's an example of a company like that. And ConsenSys is certainly more on the latter side, where ConsenSys in of itself is a parent brand for a number of different products and services that each have their own independent identities. And the reason for that is, one, we have a very diverse range of audiences and that we're serving with our products, and those products mean certain things to those consumers. The second is that because many of these companies that are within the ConsenSys portfolio began as incubated products from the early days of ConsenSys, they have their own lineage and identity that has been established in the fabric of Web3, and we very much want to respect that. The Metamask Fox is an icon of the Web3 space that many people have come to know and love, and we want to treat the work that our teams have done with a significant amount of reverence and support those brands. However, as a marketer across all of those products and services, we look for ways that we can bring our products together and introduce them to customer segments in a way that is most meaningful to those audiences. So perhaps a dApp builder is interested in using a product like Infura, but also may be interested in integrating a MetaMask into their dApp as a means to distribute and use it as for wallet verification. So we don't want to make that a clumsy and difficult experience. We want to be able to show, our audiences the easiest path to do the things that they want to do. And so while all of these products have their own unique identities and places, the marketing team and many of the teams that sit cross-functionally within our organization are thinking about ways that we can best put our audience first and serve their needs.
That's super interesting. So ConsenSys is a house of brands where each of the different verticals inside of owned by ConsenSys have their own individual brand and personality, but the way that you're looking to bring them together is more in kind of a practical sense, like how can you best integrate all of these different products so that the users in each can better leverage the other pieces within the entire ecosystem.
Yes, that's what we realized, is that the products themselves really need to show and shine. And as we were thinking about ways that we can refresh the ConsenSys brand system, what we wanted to do was use it as a framing tool around all of these products, rather than something that is, coming down and endorsing all of these products directly, or, making everything kind of look and feel the same in a way that didn't feel like it was directly aligned with the Web3 ethos to us.
I'm not sure how whether you would have such if there's a good answer to this, but I'm still curious. Within kind of this family of products, what do you think is an important infrastructure piece that's missing that you would like to see get built in ConsenSys?
So that's a difficult question to answer. I think that there's probably two parts to it. One is I think that we are constantly iterating and evolving our core product set. So there's new experiences that we're adding to products like Metamask. So, for example, earlier this year we launched a DApP companion to the Metamask wallet called the Metamask Portfolio, which was essentially like a dashboard that you could use to manage all of your balances and really kind of see everything in one place in a rich and robust experience. And so that was very much us, observing a user need in the market and seeing an opportunity for us to create something that was a companion to the core offering that we have. We're actively looking at spaces like the creator segments and other parts of the Web3 ecosystem to see how we can build and add new things that support those trends. Also figuring out ways that we can make our products more useful to different emerging segments in the Web3 ecosystem. Another MetaMask example is that we a few months ago launched a new MetaMask SDK. And we built a gaming-specific SDK for the Unity ecosystem. And so that was a way that we can make MetaMask a more useful wallet for gaming devs, which we know is a core growth sector of the market. So a lot of our explorations are coming through our core product set, but we're also actively looking to see, when there's a unique audience with a unique need that potentially could be solved with another type of product or service.
Very cool. Arch is a crypto asset management platform that helps you maximize returns with diversified and gas-efficient investment strategies. Chasing yield doesn't pay off. Instead, the Arch Token Classification Standard, or ATCS, maps and classifies crypto assets to give you the best of Web3 in 7 products grouped by 3 categories: yield-bearing, index-style, and risk-adjusted portfolios. Learn more at the link on the description. Now shifting gears a little bit, I know that you guys commissioned a really interesting survey together with YouGov. I was seeing that a really large number of people, over 15,000, were surveyed about what they think about Web3 and crypto. Would love to learn about what the most interesting findings were from that.
Absolutely, yeah. It was very important for us to make sure that this was a global survey, and so what we did was we fielded the survey in roughly 15 markets to understand how perceptions and use cases around crypto and Web3 and blockchain technology more broadly have been changing. And this is actually the second year that we've run the survey, so it's been really interesting between 2022 and 2023 to see how some of the behaviors have changed during that time, given all that's gone on in the sector. For me, there were really 2 standout insights that were important for us to consider as an ecosystem. The first was that the core tenets of Web3, like privacy, self-sovereignty, and ownership are things that people are very interested in and see as problem areas in how the internet operates today. So, should creators own a larger share of the things that they're producing? Do you feel that companies and platforms are respecting your privacy and your data in a way that you value? Those were things that stood out loud and clear as core need states of the ecosystem. The second thing that stood out to me related was that while there is a very broad and pretty mass awareness around cryptocurrencies, the core primitives of Web3 and the use of blockchain technology was not as well known amongst the average audience that we were surveying around the world. And to me, that says the sector itself has a perception problem and has an explanation problem that we need to do in order to help people understand that the very thing that they're asking for and they have identified as problems that the internet is presenting today around privacy and data and ownership are actually the things that are solved with this technology. And so the outcome for me of this is, ConsenSys has, as a large company in the space, has a responsibility to really tell those stories about how people are using this technology in different ways to really build community and do new things that really empower people. And I think that those stories are going to be what will help us understand the future use cases that will attract developers into the space to build new products and will attract new users into the space to engage with this technology in new ways. So for me, it was a very helpful survey and showcased that there's a ton of potential here.
How did results change from this year versus the last year? I
think that there were two things that really stood out in the year-over-year data for us. One was, obviously last year it was fielding the survey on or about the same time of year in late spring. There was a lot happening around the prices of the space and the broader economy. And I think that how the broader economy has played out over the course of the last few months, whether it be the banking crisis or crises earlier this year, or some of those core changes in things like interest rates, and some of the collapses that happened as well with Terra and FTX, of course, they've really colored a lot of perception in the space. And so while, overall, this year we're seeing a lot of the truly decentralized products and services really stand out as more successful on the other side of this last crypto winter. The perception halo that was created by the downfall of some of those companies still remains. And that is the marketing challenge that we have to solve for as a sector, is to really help people see that this is not just the crypto is not just about tokens and money and bad actors. It's actually about the exact opposite. It's about empowering people, and it's about enabling people to do things in a way that they couldn't do before.
So would you say that the perception around crypto has worsened this year versus last, or I guess like in the latest survey?
So we didn't specifically ask about perception of the space, so I wouldn't be able to quantitatively say whether it went up or went down that way. But I think anecdotally what we're seeing is that there's certainly work to do. And particularly when we're building a lot of new things, those new things are going to be the solution to that perception problem. And so all of the major projects in the space need to be prepared to show really the humanity behind the code in order to really change that perception. And
did you see any differences between geographies on how people are using the internet or seeing or their opinions on crypto?
Very much so. Yeah, I think what we saw was a lot of that kind of core stigma that I was describing before that we were discussing, it's really front and center in the minds of consumers in markets like North America and Europe. However, we're seeing a lot of optimism and a lot of bullishness in markets throughout Latin America, Africa, Asia, where we're seeing a good amount of new projects and new activity really spawn. And I think that those are obviously some of the core markets where there's really valuable, tangible use cases for people to introduce blockchain technology into currency structures. But also we're seeing, particularly in the APAC region, a massive boom of interest around gaming and game-related NFTs and some of the new economies that are beginning to emerge there. And so it's really exciting to see, how diverse the world use cases and perceptions are of the technology. And I think that that's indicative of Ethereum and, the broader Web3 ecosystem being a truly decentralized global community of users. That is, that's a superpower of the technology.
So it's interesting. So do you think that all the failures of last year hurt the perception about crypto in the US more than in maybe emerging countries? I
think that there's certainly a general narrative in the US market around crypto that is less optimistic and is really focusing on a lot of the bad actors and the bad behavior in the space. I think that being based in the US, I see it myself in the broader kind of mass market narratives. But I think that there's an opportunity to change that, and I think that a lot of that is going to require us to continue to build new things that are going to attract people and really show them how they fit into this technology and really help them embrace that builder mindset.
Parcel, the decentralized real estate trading platform, is making it easier to get exposure to global real estate. Through city indices, you can trade the price change of popular US cities and easily access over 5 million properties with just a few clicks. With leverage up to 10x, you can go long or short and begin trading real estate in ways you never have before. Join today to start building a diversified real estate portfolio. As a, you've been doing marketing and branding for so long. So how would you say is the most effective way of changing that perception? It looks like you're saying it's more about building things and just like showing that there's utility. Do you think that's the main thing, or is it also about like education or actually having like a marketing campaign about crypto and just like plastering cities with billboards? Or is it all of it? Like if you could just like organize the entire space to have a campaign to improve crypto perception, like what would you do?
So I think one of my early, one of my career mentors taught me early on that the best marketing you can do is show, don't tell, and I think that that's very much what we need to do as a sector. I think that there's a lot of really good ways that this technology is being used today that nobody really knows about, and that's really the powerful message that is underlying all of these changes that need to be made. And so one way that we're looking to bring light to some of those stories is through a series that we actually launched just yesterday alongside our brand refresh, which we're calling the Builder Series. And what we've done is we've produced 10 videos showing how different builders from all different walks of life, whether they're technologists or creators or community organizers in all different parts of the world, are using Web3 technologies to do things to build and improve their communities. And those stories to me are the some of the most powerful ways that we can do just that, show, not tell people. And I think that when people, see themselves in a product and they see people like them using it, it inspires them to try it out themselves. And that is going to be one of the best ways that we can really draw in new audiences and expand the footprint of Web3.
What are some of those stories that really stood out for you?
Yeah, so the first story that we have is with a builder who's based in Atlanta named Mika Black, and she is building a local project that teaches her community how DeFi works and how to use DeFi. And one of the things that she discussed was how she is using products like Metamask Learn as ways to help onboard new people into the space. And for those that don't know, Metamask Learn is a companion product to Metamask that we launched earlier this year that provides educational courses on how Web3 works, how it's different from Web2, wallets, and then the different kinds of primitives and transactions that you can do in the space in a very approachable and useful way. And so it was really great to hear that not only was she using this resource as a means to support the education curriculum within her group, but that we were able to provide something that really helped people understand how this space works in a more meaningful way. And that is the first story that we dropped. I will hold off from telling you about some of the other ones because they're going to be coming out in the next few weeks. But we've got some very exciting stories from different parts of the world with different types of people that are, either creating projects or using Web3 and Web3 education for community building in unique ways.
Besides kind of the specific stories that you're publishing, what do you think are just like broader use cases of Web3 that will get people excited and kind of see crypto as more than a casino or like a space full of scammers? I'm interested because I kind of struggle with this myself because I see kind of the potential of Web3 and DeFi, of course, but I think right now a lot of the use cases have been financial use cases. I think kind of DeFi has been the most successful kind of area within Web3 because I think blockchains were made to serve as kind of financial rails. So I think it's kind of the lowest hanging fruit to develop. But so far, DeFi being so early, it's been useful for a small group of traders who really are using DeFi to get better yields, to speculate, and I think we're just starting to see kind of the connection to real world assets and real world use cases. But so far, DeFi has been kind of pretty insulated. So I think it's fascinating to see all these financial rails being built, and I see that in the future, all of finance will be on top of blockchain rails. But when people ask me, okay, right now, how are real people, not just like crypto traders, using Web3? And yeah, I think it's harder to find those examples.
Yeah, I think, when I think about what makes crypto useful, it often goes to, ways to introduce scarcity into an internet where there's zero marginal cost for producing any type of asset. So, you can make infinite copies of a JPEG, right? And they exist everywhere. And that idea of scarcity is such a powerful and important tool in how most of our economies around the world operate and the way that we value or view goods and services. And it would be, difficult to think about the internet operating in a way that is, functionally different from that, where the assets that are produced are not validated for identity when there is value associated with those things. So I think that's why you see use cases around things like creative projects and NFTs and music and other types of creative assets, because it creates that validation layer of I really own this thing and it belongs to me. I think that, when you extrapolate away from ownership, you also look at other types of digitally native use cases that could easily adopt this technology, like gaming, and other sectors where there is often a currency, or there is kind of like an economy that's built into that system, and all of that can be built on blockchains. The third way that I see the technology really taking off is around community building. And so this is something that, almost every company tries to do with their marketing and advertising. It's one of the core tenets of building a brand, is to have a community of people that are engaging with you and advocating for you and effectively marketing on your behalf. And the legacy ways of doing that through things like cookie identification and email aliases, it's a very imperfect science, and blockchains allow people to manage communities in different ways, allow those communities to own a lot of the core data behind what they're transacting for, or what they're doing, or what they're interacting with. You can vote, you can participate, you can do all of that on chain. And then lastly, I think identity is going to be a really important component of how this scales. Going back to the point on privacy, this is a real problem with the internet today. The fact that so much of our information lives in a number of different disparate systems, and we don't really have control over that. Imagine what you could do if you thought about something like the healthcare system, where I managed my own personal healthcare data, and I gave it, I gave access to it based on the permissions that I choose to set. All of those kinds of use cases could be enabled through blockchain. So I think that while the financial infrastructure is absolutely foundational and important, and it's what's going to change how the internet operates, when you begin to extrapolate it to identity and community, that's where you begin to see a lot more use cases begin to propagate the space. And so I'm really excited to try to show some of those. And I think, the companies that are early in this sector, like ConsenSys, are going to hopefully play a hand in inspiring a lot of builders to come in and create new companies and that allow these kinds of things to happen.
The IPOR protocol is the top interest rate derivatives DeFi protocol by TVL on DeFi Llama. IPOR aims to provide lenders with the best stablecoin yields in the industry with no impermanent loss. Traders can hedge, arbitrage, or speculate on interest rates on-chain. IPOR V2 is expanding on that vision to become the credit hub of DeFi and enable borrowers to take the largest loans, and lenders can fix their yield at the best fixed rates in DeFi. IPOR V2 is launching in Q3. Deposit stables or trade rates on app.ipor.io and become part of the future of DeFi. Yeah, I think those non-financial use cases which do use financial rails are the ones that connect with people more easily. Because not everyone will be interested in taking a collateralized loan and using leverage to trade and yield farm. But I think a lot more people are interested in playing games where they own their assets, in owning their identity online, in taking ownership of their different digital creations. So yeah, I think you're right that it's kind of these other use cases that can help change the narrative around crypto. I wanted to narrow down a little bit on the community aspect that you mentioned, and just get your opinion as a marketer there, because I see a lot of projects struggling with this aspect, especially when a token is involved, because you as a project, you issue a token, and that gets more of the community excited, and you get more liquidity and people involved. But at the same time, a lot of the communication is based around the token itself. So when is it going up, why is it going down, and just a lot of price talk instead of focusing on whatever the project is building. How do you manage that?
Yeah, it's an interesting challenge. I mean, community building, from my experience, is most successful when people are brought together around a common interest or a common idea that they support and that they believe in. And I think that in many ways we use the term community building around token-based projects when it's not really community. It's it's bringing people together around a common incentive. And I think that if you look at some of the communities like some of the more successful DAOs or the more successful projects that are really about bringing people together around a common either belief system or something that they care about or something that they participate in, those are the ones with the most active, cultivated, and prosperous communities. This is I think one of the superpowers of Web3, because when you think about Web2 companies, they're really not optimized to bring interest-based communities together in the right way. Web2 companies are inherently designed to be optimized for scale. And ultimately, people don't feel a community allegiance to Instagram or Facebook. Like, they use it as a tool and maybe they follow some common people, but they're not bought into something with their peers in the way that you can do in Web3. So you look at something like an FWB or some of these really culture-based DAOs. They're people who are interested in the same music, who want to talk about the same ideas, where the driver of engagement is really about the substance, not the token. Those are the models that I think are going to be the most successful long term.
Yeah, for sure. It's just I see it's such a challenge to separate the price narrative from kind of the substance narrative. I think there's still a lot of work to be done there, for sure. I wanted to briefly touch, I know we need to be wrapping up, but I think, in this environment, it's just like the regulatory landscape is something that, everyone is thinking of. And so, for you as a marketer in the US, shaping the narrative around all these different products, how does the recent regulatory crackdown influence just your work?
Yeah, I think it's certainly highlighting that we have a lot of education to do about how the space operates and how the technology operates, and so that's something that we at ConsenSys are spending a fair bit of time on across our marketing and legal and our communications teams today. How does the Ethereum community work together? How big is it? How does a blockchain function? What does a layer 2 do? Those are questions that are often historically in the domain of technologists, not policymakers. And so what we want to do is we want to educate the policymakers about ways that the technology operates so that they can make better decisions about how it's used. And I think the second side of it, goes back to what we were discussing before, which is really highlighting the human interest of the space. I think that the prevailing narrative that we were discussing before, that's been largely influenced by a lot of the downfalls in the sector, that's the same narrative that policymakers are consuming and discussing today. And so, the same kind of mind shift that we need to make with the future developers and users of Web3 technology is the same mind shift that we have to make with policymakers. And so that's very much front and center for us as a company. And I know many of our colleagues and partners in the sector as well.
For sure. No, yeah, that's a really good point. I think a good way to improve, hopefully, the regulatory landscape is just improving education around what this technology does and kind of the good that it can do. Because I think a lot of focus has been placed on the harm that it can bring investors instead of the benefits.
Exactly. This technology solves a lot of problems that are, foundational issues with the financial infrastructure, the global financial infrastructure, as well as how the internet operates. And I think that needs to be brought more to the forefront.
And then to wrap up, what's ConsenSys just like long-term plan? Like what's the vision as a whole?
It really goes back to, helping the world adopt this technology and really see themselves and see the value of it. We aim to continue to grow our core product set. We think that an internet that is enabled and empowered by Web3 technologies is going to be a better internet for everyone, and that's very much a driving thrust of what we're doing day in and day out, today and tomorrow. And I think we're really just at the beginning. The new brand launch today is really just the starting point of a broader story that we're going to tell, not only through ConsenSys, but through our products like Metamask and Infura and Linea, that we can really excite and inspire people to really see themselves as a builder.
This was super fun, Neal. Thank you so much for joining me, talking about ConsenSys and Web3 branding. Really great stuff. So thanks, and we'll be covering all the different developments in all the different projects under ConsenSys at the Defiant, and also we'll have a Q&A with our community about the survey that you guys put out. Really great to touch on all those points.
That's really great. Thanks so much for having me.